Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Harry. I'm filling in as co-host this afternoon with Rafe. I'm excited to be here. Rafe, how are you today?
Hey, Harry, I am phenomenal. A great day to be recording a podcast with you, and we hope Zach is enjoying his time off. We should all get time off, Harry. I'm thinking we should.
Yeah, I think so.
And then we'll. What's going to happen is I'm going to go on vacation next, and you're going to have to fill in for me with Zach. So that could be a hoot nanny, as they say. All right, so hey. Thanks, listeners, for showing up. We really appreciate you. Without you, we would be nothing here. As usual, you can reach us at buffnagle@buffnagle.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, all sorts of other places. If you need us to be on a place and we're not there, let us know and we will get there. If you are new to our podcast, hey, thanks for coming. We are glad you are here. Seriously, it's great to have you along and on the Buff team. We're going to ask you to give us 4 episodes, if you would, and we will give you a reason to come back for more. We'll be talking about all sorts of different things, and surely there will be something that resonates with you. And remember, if you tell a friend to listen, you will get a free episode. We'd like to ask you, if you're on one of those podcasting machines on your phone or computer, to hit that subscribe button, the follow button, the tell me when the Buff drops new content button, whatever those buttons are. Hit those buttons and things should be good. So, Harry, it's a great day here. How are things in North Carolina?
Oh, they're fantastic. It's a beautiful sunny day. Just got done mowing the lawn.
Nice.
It's not too hot, not too cold. It's definitely not too hot for July, but there's places I'd rather be.
Yeah, like a sunny Sunday afternoon. There are a lot of places I'd rather be, but there's a nice place when it is hot on the ground. There is always a very nice place to be, and where is that?
And it's nice and cool up in the air, right?
Up in the air. You get to 3,000 or 4,000 feet, and you crack that little window, open that little tube that lets the air in, and it is a cool and wonderful place to be in a small plane zipping around the skies of North America.
I 100% agree. Ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon we'll be talking about the fact that both myself and Rafe are private pilots, licensed private pilots.
Licensed, yes, licensed.
Yes, that is important. But we're going to be sharing some of our stories and adventures and kind of how we both got to this point. So, Rafe, you got your pilot's license, back in 80s?
Back in the day. In fact, Wilbur and Orville taught me to fly.
I'm sure they did.
No, I got mine in the 80s. I went to grad school in 87, and around 80. Well, you know what? Around 88 or 89. I met a guy who was a pilot who was also a student, and he said, "Well, come on out to the airfield and we'll talk about what we do." And I went out there, and there was a flying club, and if you joined the club, you could take lessons at some astronomically low rate. And so when I was in graduate school, I figured I needed something exciting to learn.
That's right. Not statistics, apparently.
Not statistics, right? So I signed up one summer, and then over the course of that summer, the next year, and the following summer, I think I got all the hours and stuff that I needed. And one day in about 1990, I think 89 or 90, I took the flight test and passed the test, Harry, and they gave me the license.
That's right, but passing the test gives you permission to fly pretty much solo anywhere in the world, right? You are pilot in command.
Yeah, and it gives you, certainly in North America. I didn't try flying. There were no international boundaries near Fort Collins, Colorado, in the late 80s, early 90s. So I didn't get a chance to I didn't get a chance to try to fly to Canada or something like that.
Right.
Have you ever? Now you were in Tacoma. Did you fly to Canada?
So I got my license. I finished my license, I should say, out of Boeing Field, just south of Seattle, between Seattle and Tacoma. It's, from what I've heard, one of the busiest airports in the United States as far as flight training, UPS deliveries, Boeing test flights, naval air stations just to the north. It's a busy place to learn.
When you were out there, that was the home of Bufnagle Aviation as well.
That's right.
Okay, so for those of you who have been out to the Seattle Tacoma area, Seattle sits norther and Tacoma is souther, and in between Seattle and Tacoma is SeaTac, SeaTac, which is the Seattle Tacoma Airport. But just north of that airport, Harry, right? I mean, it's
like 3 or 4 miles.
Yeah, so there's another airport right along I-5, right? So I-5 goes from Tacoma up to Seattle, and just off to the west there, on that little tiny narrow bit of land between the Sound and those hills that you can't land on, is that little tiny airport in there, and that is Boeing Field, right?
That's right. And so that's Boeing Field. It has 2 runways. There's a smaller, I forget how wide it is. I'm sure I could look it up. It's got a smaller, maybe 4,000, 5,000 foot runway, and a much larger 10,000 foot long, 200 foot wide runway that accommodates all of your Boeing test flights and other heavy aircraft.
So is Boeing stationed there, or?
There's a couple of Boeing factories in the area. There's one also to the north along Payne Field, which is the building that we actually went to when you came to visit Seattle. We did their factory tour.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the thing. If you
there's another one.
Really?
So across on the eastern side of I-5 is the Renton Airport. So within this small 10 mile radius of airspace, you have 3 big-ish airports, and that's where I learned how to fly.
Yeah, and so, all right, so I learned to fly in Fort Collins, Colorado, at Fort Collins Airfield, which was this little. It was called downtown Fort Collins, which I don't know if there was no other Fort Collins other than downtown Fort Collins, right? And there was the air, right, and that runway there was probably 4,500 feet. So for those of you out there trying to get a picture for how big these things are, 5,280 feet is a mile. So if you want to round it, you say 5,000 feet is about a mile. So most small private pilot airplane airports are about a 5,000 foot runway. Yeah,
or even shorter.
Or shorter. And you can take some of those planes, those the smaller Cessnas and the planes that are designed to land on very short fields. They can land on very short fields. But 4,000 feet is a very comfortable runway. 4,500 feet, very comfortable runway. But the 10,000 foot runways, those are the ones for those big planes. When you're at Atlanta or you're flying out of SeaTac, those big planes require big runways because they need a lot of space to get up to speed.
They do. They need enough speed to get enough, airflow over their wings, generate enough lift to pick up thousands of tons. Not thousands. I guess not thousands of tons, but
it's got
thousands of pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So how does the airplane work? So there's
makes it go. Actually,
money makes. Well, apparently it takes a lot of money. Okay, so let's go through a couple of these things because I'm sure there are young aviation buffs out there thinking, wait a minute, the Bufnagle people fly. I want to fly too. So what does it take? Okay, let's think. I want to cover a couple things. I want to cover what was it cost and what's the effort required to get the first level so you can fly a plane by yourself legally. All right. And then the second thing is a cost estimate. And then where do you go from that? So what's the effort involved nowadays?
The general effort involved, the FAA posts regulations to achieve your private pilot license, your private pilot certificate. And usually that requires 40 hours total. I'm sure I'm going to miss some here in general, right? But 40 hours total. A couple of cross-country trips, which is usually defined as 50 miles from point A to point B.
Yeah, so that was the thing. When they said I was in Colorado and they were like, we have to do cross country trips, and I was like, what? We're going to Maine? I mean, it's like, what do we got to do?
No,
But it's
we're
not
just going to
that.
hop over to the next town over.
Well, that was the thing. You could do cross country in Fort Collins, Colorado. You could go to Alliance, Nebraska, and that counted as cross country because if it's over 50 miles, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the requirements. You have to have, I think it's 3 hours of simulated instrument time. So if for some reason you run into clouds, some reason something happens where you suddenly can't see visually out of the aircraft, because as a private pilot, you're only allowed to fly under what's called visual flight conditions,
Yeah, yeah.
as opposed to instrument flight conditions, right?
So,
And
yeah,
you get enough practice in that to make sure that you're proficient enough to listen to instructions.
yeah. So and that's the thing. Like when you're up there and you're by yourself, you can't just pull over and stop. I mean, you can pull over. The plane's not going to
Really
stop. It will stop eventually, but there's a big ball that's going to hit before it does that. But that is the thing. So when you fly, most people when they start out, everybody when they start out is flying on what we call visual flight rules, which means you look around and based upon what you see outside and a couple things you see on your instruments, that's how you fly. You look out, you want to go that way, you turn your plane that way, you go that way. There's the instruments other than the radio. Um, they're not very necessary. You got
Airspeed's probably pretty necessary.
airspeed, but as long as you're not falling, you're doing okay. So airspeed and altimeter, those things kind of matter. But other than that, you're flying on visual flight rules. But when you do the simulated instrument flight rules, you take. I wore a hood. Did you wear a hood?
I wore a hood. Yep.
Yeah. So they put this. It's not like being a Jedi master, but there's this thing that goes over your head, and then there's a thing that comes down over your face.
A really big ball cap.
Yeah, and the visor of the ball cap blocks the windows, and all you can see are the instruments in front of you, and you got to fly the plane based upon what you see the altimeter doing and the airspeed indicator doing, and that ball that keeps things level.
That's right.
You got to fly it that way because there are times when you will, if you're not careful, you could end up in a cloud, and that can be very disorienting.
That's right. And basically you were trained to not fly into those clouds. So if you're learning, go to a small airport or search online for a lot of places do discovery flights, or it's a discounted flight to see if you like it. You'll go up with an instructor and he'll take off, he'll do all the taxiing, the radio work, and then you'll get up in the air and he goes, all right, your controls. And he'll tell you to turn left or to turn right. And for the most part, it's like driving a car. You take the yoke, turn a little bit to the left, and the plane slowly banks to the left. Straighten it back out. It straightens back out. And obviously, as you learn a couple more nuances of what power does, what your rudders are doing, how to level the plane, how to make things smooth for your passengers. But it's a generally easy process.
So I started in Fort Collins, which is a very small, what's called an uncontrolled airport. So basically, there's a runway, and there are planes parked by the runway, and somebody's got the keys, and you go and, for lack of a better term, you start up the plane, you drive to the end of the runway, you tell people that are in the area there's a frequency for that airport. You get on the intercom and you say, "Hey, I'm going to be taking off." You say that in code, of course, and then as long as you don't hear somebody saying, "No, don't do that. I'm trying to land." All right. As long as that doesn't happen, then you're free to go. So it's uncontrolled. It's like some of those intersections out in the country where there's an intersection and everybody's got to yield, and it's on your honor and on your intelligence to make sure that nobody else is coming. And if nobody else is coming, then you can go. But that's different than a controlled airport.
Right. And that's what I had when I was learning. So I would always have to talk to Boeing Tower and their ground. So usually at a controlled airspace, you have one frequency monitoring all the airspace and one frequency monitoring all the planes on the ground as they're going across taxiways and runways. And I would talk to both of them, and I say, I want to go take off, and I want to go fly to the northeast. And they'd tell me where to go. They tell me when to turn on the runway, go ahead, take off. And then they're kind of controlling me within their little cylinder of airspace.
Yeah. So and there are different kinds of airspaces depending upon the the traffic, like what you getting? Are you getting big commercial traffic? Are you getting military traffic? Are you just getting civilian traffic? And that is kind of a, like you said, a cylinder around that airport that kind of goes into the sky up to what, it's like 15 or 20 or 25,000 feet, depending on the definition, right?
2,500, not
20, oh,
25,000.
2,500, really?
Yeah.
Above that, you're all good. You're all good.
Oh, I'm sure above 18,000 feet is your Class A airspace, which is all instrument airspace. But everything below that is either Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, or Golf.
Yeah, so you get to learn those fancy letters, right? Right. So there's an aviation alphabet that is used so that you don't make mistakes in the air. Okay, which leads me to one of the mistakes I made, which had that mistake been fully made,
okay,
we wouldn't be doing this podcast today. All right, so when I was in, I had to do. You have to do, to get your license, at least 3 takeoffs and landings at a controlled airport. That's one of the rules. You can't only do your work at an uncontrolled airport. So when I was in Fort Collins, the closest airport that was practical wasn't in Denver, but it was up in Cheyenne. All right, because if you flew to Denver, they charge you to land there. It's like $35 to land there, and I didn't want to. Why should I pay that?
Pay $35.
Right. So I thought, well, I'm going up to Cheyenne, and now Cheyenne is this town in southeastern Wyoming, just north of the Colorado border, and they have a National Guard thing there. So they have a gigantic 10,000 foot runway there, and a smaller runway, which is, I don't know, probably about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. And I was flying up there, and I filed my little flight plan. I said, I'm going to be going from Fort Collins up to Cheyenne. I'm going to do some touch and goes, and then I'm going to turn around and come back. So I get up there, and I start talking to the approach control guys, I guess it is, and they say to do something, and then I think they said to go a little bit west and then come in from the west and make a left turn onto the final. All right, so for those of you guys out there, there's a traffic pattern. It's not just people flying willy-nilly around everywhere. People follow certain roadways in the sky, and one of the roadways is the final approach to the runway, and then the area where you go straight off the runway and continue out. So there's so I was told to come in from the west and then make a left turn onto final for runway 31. All right, now 31, that number, if you add a 0 to the end, that will tell you the number of degrees from north that runway faces. So runway 31, add a 0, you get 310. So that, if you start north being 0, you go all the way 310 degrees. So it's a little bit kind of northwesty is runway 31. The other runway up there was runway 27, which faces directly west, because 270 is 270, which is straight west. So I was flying around up there, and I had never been up there before that I remembered. And it's all visual flight rules. So I'm looking on the ground trying to find this thing. And the guy says, you need to turn left onto runway 27. And I saw, or runway 31, I saw runway 27, and I thought that was 31. So I was planning to go up and turn left onto 27, which was after runway 31, because I was coming in from the west, or from the southwest. So from the southwest coming up. Yeah. Okay. I had to make it So I missed my runway 27, and the guy's on the horn. He's like, you need to get to runway 31. I was like, that's where I'm going. And then about 20 seconds later, he says, whatever my number was, he says, you need to take immediate evasive action. All right. And what that means is there's somebody going to hit you head on, is what it was. All right. So at that point, when he was kind of sounding very important on the phone, is I kind of bailed out and to the right. And somebody else, it's amazing how you can't see these guys until they're right on you. Another guy was coming from below and coming in my direction, and he bailed out to his right, right? So he passed by me to the left and up. Now, I don't know how close it was. It wasn't like we were 18 feet apart. I mean, I'm sure we were, a couple hundred feet apart. But so that's a little bit spooky. And the fault was all on me, because I got my runways mixed up, because I didn't see runway 31. I saw 27, and I didn't see the numbers on it until it was too late. And then I don't remember. I looped around and I apologized, a couple mea culpas over the radio, and I made it They did let me land and do a couple touch and goes, and
Sure.
I don't think I had to write anything up. Did
Well, that's good. As long as you don't get a phone number from air traffic control, you're usually good to go.
Yes, they said don't. They didn't. I didn't have to call anybody. So, did you have anything exciting? Not exciting, because exciting is bad when you're flying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think every single time I went flying, and I told you, I would always say, just went for a 2-hour flight, and you would ask me, did anything exciting happen? And I would go, nope, and that's the best way to have it. I guess the most interesting thing that ever happened to me is I was flying mostly north over to the San Juan Islands, which is about 40 minutes flight time in a Cessna 150, 172, one of the two.
Yep.
North from Boeing Field. So I took off and I skirted the west side of Seattle, downtown Seattle, and I was climbing up to about 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And what I didn't know this is over the Olympic Mountains to the northwest is the base leg of the traffic pattern for SeaTac.
Oh, really?
So
that far out?
That far out. So these big old planes are 30 or 40 miles out, making these really big traffic patterns.
Yeah, so that's the road,
Yep.
right? So there's
There's 4 sections.
Yep.
So when you take off, it's called upwind, all right? And then you'll turn left or right. That's called crosswind. And then if you decide to stay within this little loop, right, this little NASCAR circuit in the air, if you're going the opposite direction of the place you just took off, that's called downwind, right? Upwind, downwind. And then say you want to go back and land, that next right turn, 90-degree turn, is called base. And then you'll make one more 90-degree turn onto final.
Right, so it's upwind, crosswind, downwind, base, final, drive on the ground for a little bit, and then do it again. Yeah.
So I think this, I'm pretty sure I saw a Southwest 737 come out of nowhere, right? Because they're going so fast. Probably, I'm sure it's probably like 1,000 feet above me. But 1,000 feet above is the same distance as 1,000 feet away. Right, on the ground.
And 1,000 feet isn't that far, right? I mean,
it's not.
1,000 feet, that's a little over 300 yards. That is that is not, there are golfers that can hit it that far, right?
That's right.
Right.
So I saw this big old 737 come above me as I'm going below it, and I thought it was actually kind of cool.
Did they know you were there? I mean, did air traffic control tell you to go take that route at that altitude doing that? Or were you
so there's certain, you learn about this, there's certain altitudes that you fly at based upon whether you fly visually or if you fly with instruments, whether you're flying mostly northeast or mostly southwest, right?
Right.
It's all broken down. So I was flying probably 3,500 feet. I think I was flying mostly north. And big old 737 right overhead. And that's enough separation distance where I don't have any...
You don't get no wash.
No wash, right.
All right, well, that's good. And when we were out there, you asked for permission to go right over SeaTac, right?
I did, yeah. So you were flying with me. And it's the first and only time I've ever done this. We're kind of puttering around the Puget Sound because it's just fun to do that. And I thought to myself, we should fly over SeaTac because it's you, me, and Chris and Olivia, and it'll be fun.
Right. And so keep in mind this idea that there are these it's this big long, like you said, that's a great example is the NASCAR track,
right,
over the runways, and most of the runways at SeaTac go north south, right?
Yes. So we're flying over the Puget Sound on the west side.
Yep.
And I call up the Seattle Tower. I go, hey, Seattle Tower, I'm Cessna 1234. I'm over here on the west side, and I would like to do I think it's called a Mariner transition. That's the name for it.
Yeah.
Where you fly from west to east to get through the airspace to go to the other side. And they go, all right, granted, go to the south end of the runways, the south threshold, and fly across. So we got to fly over Seattle International and watch some planes land underneath us.
That's right.
As we flew to the other side.
Well, but you think about it, that's really the safest place to cross the airport is at the airport, right?
100%.
Because the planes there aren't in the air. They're on the ground, right? And as long as you're going over. Now, you didn't buzz the tower.
No.
We didn't pull a Tom Cruise and buzz the tower. So that was That was good. So you did that, but you started your training in Oklahoma, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I needed something to do, right?
Right.
Other than army training. So I looked up a little place. I did one of those little discovery flights for $75 or $100 or whatever it is. And then I did another lesson with the instructor there. And what's interesting with flight training is a lot of it comes down to, do you like working with your flight instructor?
Right.
If you have somebody that doesn't have the same type of personality, you guys just don't get along, you're not going to enjoy flying. And that's kind of how it was for me. I didn't really mesh with the guy who was there. He seemed kind of like, oh, well, we just kind of do some flying. I was like, well, that's what I want to do, but this seems really lackadaisical.
Well, certainly if you're taking your life into your hands, and it was one thing for me to fly by myself and put my life in my hands. It took on an entirely different perspective when other people were in the plane with me.
Yes, 100%.
And that is the thing that's like, you kind of feel that when you drive, but when you're learning to drive like that, you're like 16. And typically your parents are in the car, so you don't feel that level of responsibility. I tell you, when I was taking friends up in grad school and afterwards, that was a completely different thing. It was like the amount of study you do the night before to make sure everything's going according to plan, the checkout of the plane, like all of these things really matter.
Pre-flight checks, all of your plan, making sure you know tower frequencies, making sure you know where you're going, make sure you know what to do in case of some kind of emergency, which is half of your training anyway.
In case you're on the wrong runway or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So did you is there anything that you found odd that you was like, wow, I have to learn that, or I get to learn that, or I didn't know that about flying? I mean, there's because the flying I'd done before that is I get to the airport, I walk down the sky ramp, all right, whatever it is, I get on the plane, and then I'm cargo, and then I get off. So I didn't know any of that other stuff.
I think the biggest thing for me was realizing, one, flying is not that hard. Flying the airplane in the air, you don't have to do anything. Woo-hoo. The power's on. You just keep on going.
As long as the engine keeps running, you're all right.
That's right. But that's the real trick, right? And like I said, probably over half of your flight training is, what do I do if the engine goes out?
Now, did they do that with your training too? Did they have to do the thing where they okay, so there's typically 2 tanks, right? And there's a switch on the floor on the instructor side. And
right in the middle.
Is it in the middle? Okay, but I remember my instructor, because somebody had told me this was coming, so I kind of knew it. But they will shut off your engine on you in training. And so what he had done is he dropped his pencil, his clipboard, and said, "Oop, dropped my pencil." And as he was reaching down for it, he reached over and he flipped the switch to switch it to the empty tank. Okay. And after, I don't know, it was 10, 15, 20 seconds, something like that, the engine just stopped. And it got real quiet in the plane. Right? And then
that didn't happen to me.
Oh, did they?
You practice those situations, right?
Yeah.
You go through some kind of checklist and making sure, okay, I checked the magnetos on the engine. I checked, the fuel tanks. I checked the carburetor heat. I checked all of these flow items, making sure you find the flaw in the system.
Right. Well, but before you do that, the first thing to do is maintain your airspeed.
Maintain your airspeed. Set it to 60.
Right. So,
65,
and the way to maintain your airspeed, if you don't have any power, is to drop the nose. Right. And then your plane becomes a very expensive glider, very heavy glider, because it has an engine in it that doesn't work. Right. And look for a place to land. And then once you do that, then you start working on the problem. So
that's right.
So did you ever get to do anything fun or exciting other than flying over SeaTac?
I don't think so. I think that's like the pinnacle of what I've done. I've always wanted to, when I first started flying in Seattle, one of my goals was to fly across the state to go see Zach in Spokane when he lived there.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to do that?
I did not.
Yeah, Zach moved away. That's the problem.
He did. And then I'd also have to learn about mountain flying, which is a beast in and of itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of weather issues going on there. So, and did you go to Canada?
No, I did not ever go to Canada. I did fly near Canada.
Did they scramble the Canadian Mounties?
They did not. I stayed in U.S. airspace.
All right. Well, we had a guy. My instructor was also a licensed aerobatics pilot.
Okay.
So he knew how to fly the biplanes that can go upside down and do all sorts of fancy things. And it was so he said, "Hey, do you want to go do aerobatics?" And I was like, "Okay." So it is a remarkable thing to fly aerobatics because it changes every bit of your perspective. So the most of the planes that we would fly, we sat side by side. So they have the yoke, which is that steering wheel that it goes left and right, but it also goes in and out,
Right.
which controls what pushes the nose down when you push it in, right? But in the aerobatic planes, you sit front back, right? And because you're front back, you don't have a yoke anymore. You have a stick, like in a World War II fighter, and the throttle, instead of being a knob on the front of the on the front of the panel, is a lever on the left side. So you have the stick that is sitting right in the middle, right, and the throttle's on the left. And so the pilot actually sits in the back on that one. The main pilot does, and I got to sit in the front, of course, because I was right. And but you both have controls. And if you get a chance to fly a stick aircraft ever, you've got to take that opportunity, because it's more like the video game. All right, it is substantially more. It's just more fun, man. It is more exciting. So we did a couple things. We did the where you roll and fly upside down.
Sure.
All right. So if you're going to fly upside down, well, let me rephrase that. The regulations say that if you know you're going to fly upside down, then you have to have a parachute. Right. So
aerobatics requires a parachute.
So we had to get outfitted for parachutes. So we put the parachutes on, and then it's not just a seat belt in those aerobatic planes. It's a whole harness that goes over your shoulders. And you might think, well, I'll just be flying upside down, but you forget, like when you're sitting in a chair like you are right now, all your weight's on your butt, right? And you can move your feet a little bit and you move your arms. When you are upside down and you're hanging in a harness, it's completely different. There's no weight on your butt anymore. All that weight that's normally on your butt is now on your shoulders, right? And the blood's rushing to your head. All right. And all your controls now are backwards, because when you push the stick forward, instead of going down, you now go up. Right. When you pull it back, you go down instead of up. So it is a did I get those words right? Up, down. Well, anyway, it's all reversed when you're upside down. And those planes require special pumps in the fuel to make sure that
you need a fuel pump.
You need a fuel pump, because normally the gravity, fuel follows gravity, just like you in the plane, and the gravity goes down to the engine. So we did the acrobatic roll upside down thing, which was kind of fun, and then we did a thing called a hammerhead, which is where you fly straight up until you fly straight up until you can't see we're doing things with our hands here.
We're showing each other in the camera.
You can't see this. I'll pull up my little Lego plane model here that I have at my desk. You go straight up, and then eventually those small aerobatic planes aren't strong enough. They're not like Navy fighter jets where you can actually climb and accelerate while going straight up. Eventually they will not be able to.
They'll kind of hang on the prop.
They'll kind of hang on the prop, and then after a while they start to fall backwards. And it's a very interesting feeling, because now instead of being on your butt or on your shoulders, you're on your back. And when you turn your head to the side, you don't see, the horizon is now sideways, right? And what they would do is on the struts of the biplane, they tie little what magnetic tape is, right?
Yep.
Right. There's little streamers on the side, and when the streamers stop being fully back and they start to wobble, that means you're starting to fall backwards. And as soon as we started to fall backwards, he gave it
kick a rudder.
You kick a rudder and you tip the plane upside down. So now you go from, well, not upside down. You go from prop up facing the heavens to prop facing the hells. All right. And you're going straight down at the earth, and you are accelerating at 9.8. I mean, you are just going straight down and now the engine's really pulling you down. So you're pulling more. All right. So you go straight down, and then you pull the stick back and pull out of that thing.
You level out.
And that is a rush. I tell you, if you get a chance, Harry, you got to do that. And after you do that, roller coasters are like, yeah, I've been there, done that one. But those are some fun things you get to do. So are you going to get the instrument rating? Are you going to go the next step? Do you have plans for that?
I think so. Depending on how Army stuff shakes out, because my whole life is dictated by the United States government. I would love to be a flight instructor. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Jamie and I have talked about moving back to Wilmington, or her, I guess, moving back to Wilmington, moving there with her.
Right.
But if I could, be a flight instructor out there, there's a nice airport with some stuff. So I'd probably eventually get an instrument rating and a commercial rating, and then a flight instructor rating. Right, all of those in sequence, and then fly, which I think would be fun. Get my own airplane and teach out of that. It'd be a good time.
Well, that would be that'd be an interesting thing to do. Would fly out of your own airplane. But those flying clubs, at least the one I worked with, was phenomenal because people who owned planes would lease them to the club, and then you had a large variety of planes that you got to fly. So
yeah, unfortunately, I didn't realize this at the time, but when I was flying in Seattle, that's like the Pacific Northwest is America's aviation hub.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until I moved away and realized no one else flies airplanes.
Well, they do. Aren't the Cessnas based like in Wichita or something like that? Somewhere in the
middle? Yeah.
So you could move to Wichita. Tell Jamie it's either Wilmington, Wichita, or Tacoma.
That's right.
And you can pick one of those spots. So, all right, Harry. Any final advice for the pilot wannabes out there?
The aspiring aviators?
Yes, aspiring.
I would say go for it. If you do go for it, I don't think we really discussed this in detail at the beginning, but we'll just touch on it now. The cost is up there.
Yep.
It's anywhere between $8,000 and $12,000, but a lot of the cost is how fast can you get your hours done, and how fast can you kick your instructor out of the airplane? Right? Because you're paying more for the instructor, and part of that is learn on your own. Take the FAA written test on your own, because that's perfectly legal. And then set aside some money to go do it. It's definitely a lifelong skill. Your license never expires. You just have to get a biannual flight review every 2 years.
Yep.
And then even if you haven't flown in a while, like you have, you can just go get that flight review and start up again.
Yeah, it is a great skill to have, and it really it's one of those things that it opens your eyes to a whole bunch of things you didn't even know were hiding in plain sight.
That's right.
You learn how to read what's going on at the airport. You can listen to the FAA towers, and you can hear how they're talking to folks, and it gives you a completely different understanding of a piece of the world that everybody brushes up against. But you get to go to the other side. It's like going through that in Harry Potter. It's like going through that
platform 9 3/4.
There it is, 9 3/4. And on the other side, it's like, holy cow, there's a whole world over here.
That's right.
And it's a wonderful thing. And then once you get in there, it's a wonderful place to be. There's a tremendous, I'll call it a fraternity, even though it's male and female. There's a lot of, you'll find pilots are generally very, very. I found they were wonderfully nice people. Mm-hmm. Occasionally you get some arrogant folks, but they tend to self-select themselves out of the fraternity.
That's right.
So, but it's a great group, and everybody has been in the same position you are in. Everybody didn't know at some point. So
that's right.
I will encourage it too.
Yeah, I think it's good, a good place to be all around. But at this time, we'd like to thank our listeners for going on our personal aviation journey.
Nice.
Talked with each other. We encourage you, if you have any interest, to go ahead and give us a shout out or contact us. We'll be more than willing to do this again and talk with you. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. Seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.